So, good morning, class. We are back and we're, again, first of all, going through the important stuff. Although we have class starting right now, we have break for the rest of the week. So, happy Chuseok, happy Thanksgiving. I am thankful for many, many things in my life. I hope you guys are thankful for many things in your lives too, including, I hope you guys are thankful that although you do not have a midterm exam, what you do have is time. And so I suggest you use the time to develop your papers and your guangxi or your network, your social capital with any companies you might be interested in. What many wise students in the past have done is use the week vacation to contact a parking lot attendant and ask them some basic questions. After you know some details about the company, then you can ask the front doorman. And then you learn more and you ask maybe the front secretary and you learn more, and eventually you can get enough information about the company so that you can contact the managers that you want to work for and sound intelligent and ask them questions, maybe sharing some of the Scopus journal articles that you have that they might not have access to. So again, I hope that's clear. Again, welcome to the East Asian Management class. We have the one last class before we have our break for a week, but during your break, it is very wise for you guys to be able to contact companies and maybe survey them. And for your reference, this afternoon at 1:30 to 2:45, we will have two company executives joining a Zoom session. If you are interested, contact the teaching team and we can give you the Zoom contacts to join and listen to how interviews are conducted in Samsung, and students will be sharing information about how interviews are conducted at Hyundai. Hopefully we'll hear some good inside information. Any questions from anybody before class starts? No? Ali, since you're co-host, are you able to manage people in the waiting room? Ali, can you hear me okay?
Okay.
Are you able to admit people, or is that just me?
Because I couldn't see the button to accept people here, so I'm not sure.
Okay.
At the moment, I'm not a co-host.
I think you have two different accounts that are signed in. I think they're both co-hosts.
Okay.
All right. So one other thing that I want to start with is, in addition to the class posts, and many of you have started to post details, again, I wanted to share the idea that several files are already in the class Facebook group. So make sure you check what some other students shared before. You may find it very, very useful. Now, with that said, I also want to go through and remind you guys with the classes. We've gone through week 1, week 2, week 3. We're basically at technically at week 5, but because week 3 we used for you guys to give presentations, we're still back a little bit. I wanted to show you guys a summary. Where is it here? So last week we talked about the art of war. And you saw that inside the, just making sure you guys can see all of this, inside the PPTs, we went through and I tried to explain to you that a key component of the art of war is to be aware of your information. Know yourself and know your competitor. Know the terrain, and be a good moral leader, things like that. So related to knowing the information, you should be aware that there's a crazy amount of information in the world right now. It's not really wise to sit in a room and just have one person alone talking nonstop, because nobody can know as much as is out there in the internet. It's better if we help direct you to some of the key places to learn information, and you get practice filtering through the crazy amounts of information. For example, I'm obviously available to teach on class, and you can see that I also already taught this class. You can go through and see how I look really ugly when I'm teaching this before, talking about Chinese management. I'm not going to go through it too much here. You can also see how, oops, this is talking about different people have different values and motivations, and they work differently, they're motivated differently. That's very interesting. Some students have already shared some other details, and we're starting to share online more details, and I highly recommend you, oops.
Are important, but if you want to write essays
just,
that inspire, messages that forge brighter connections.
There we go. So this information shows you a bunch of different ads, but the key point that I was trying to show is that students have shared some very educational videos talking about international management. And you can go through and see this in the Facebook groups. I'm just going to show this for a couple of seconds.
내 나라, 내 이웃에 대한 자부심이 차올랐었죠. 위기의 시간에 우리는 미국이나 유럽 사람들에게 미안해질 정도로 자신감을 가졌습니다. 어쩌면 한국인은 그동안 최근 확진자 숫자를 보도했습니다. 19 사태를 전체의 78%가 됐습니다. 반면 대한민국에서 71%로 대한민국 펜실베니아 주립
Doesn't matter. Is that you?
So
okay, you're on. Wait, hang on, let me see.
This guy is this is a video of a professor in North America. He's bringing down just a variety of students that if we had a regular classroom, it would be interesting to do, but we can't do the same thing. I have done this in the past. He has brought down just random people from the audience, but he did it specifically to show that some people are from different backgrounds, different thought practices. And what he's showing here is that there's one regular North American Caucasian girl that's part of a sorority, which is a popular type of university girl, and there's another Asian girl next to him, and he's asking both of them the same questions, talking about how are you doing at school, what kind of marks do you have? And the American girl generally says she's doing pretty good, her mom's pretty happy at her, she's kicking butt. She's basically saying she's really, really good. And then the other girl, the Asian girl, says, well, she's not too bad. Basically, she's saying that she's just surviving. She's not amazing. But then when they check the details, it shows that the Asian girl has almost a perfect grade point average, even though she said she was just so-so. And the American girl was basically failing, but saying she was doing amazingly well. And it just goes to show that North Americans have one style of talking. And several people in Asia have a different style of talking. And that relates to the art of war and the guangxi, the idea that you should network with people around you to get to know who they are, to get to know what they are. And for our class, I'm not just trying to teach you what is in our textbook, which is very important, but you can leverage a lot of these details. So we go back. While you are on vacation during the Chuseok break for the next week, you can learn more and you can study the massive open online courses, basically online classes from any organization, such as this online class about Harvard and how business is done and what is the culture of Chinese. Talking about China, this is a free Harvard class. Even if you don't watch the whole video, by studying this class or attending this class, it is, I have seen several people put on their resume they studied Harvard classes, which would be true. This is a Harvard class, you put in your revenue, you put on your resume that you studied Harvard classes. A lot of people might not understand the idea of MOOCs and might not understand how anybody can do that now. It's not as special as it once was, so it might make you look good. We also started talking a lot about social capital, and I believe I gave you homework to go through this and talk about what are important things to help give you success. And some people talked about natural talent is important, or effort, hard work is important, intelligence, education, luck. This article talks about how natural talent can help, and there's some good points and bad points about it. And effort, working hard, is good, but there's good points and bad points about it. And ultimately what it talks about is the values of each of these, and you should understand what is very important. I just want to check. Everybody here can hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So if we click on through to some of these details, we have gone through, we've talked about the, for review, the basis, the basis of Maslow, Herzberg, McGregor. So traditional comparative management models. We've talked about how long it took for USA to grow, and then how long it took for Japan to grow, 70 years. How long it took for Korea to grow, 20 or 30 years. How long it's going to take Vietnam and China to grow, 5 to 10 years. We also talked about the definition of everybody is born parochial, only knowing one thing. And then you get educated that there are other ways, and you become ethnocentric, because you don't understand the new way as well as your natural way. You think the other ways are strange or bad. And it's natural for everybody to not try to understand the foreign style. So that's a problem. You skip over the advantages. Only once you are very well aware of yourself, relying on only your culture and how that is a problem, then you can start to see the true advantages of culture. And most people start by thinking the other culture is bad or the other culture is strange. And when we talk about cultural synergies or cultural blindness, some people see that the other side is kind of strange. Other cultures are strange. You need to invest a lot of time and energy to make sure you dig or invest your time to appreciate why the other things are different and learn advantages. So the textbook also talked a little bit about Samsung and Hyundai today in class this afternoon that everybody's invited to. We'll be hearing more about Samsung and Hyundai. We're going to be talking a lot more later weeks after midterm break about Korean management. We did talk about Hofstede, several details here. I didn't go into the 2 million minutes video, but I encourage you guys to watch the A second,
Không,
I
em
think
bật
I
quạt được
need
nhưng mà em bật quạt nó lại bị nói á.
okay, so with the 2 million minutes, it's basically showing that people in China and Korea study more than almost anybody else on the planet. And when you study, you're focused on usually maths and sciences, which is great for your future. India studies a lot, but usually much less than Korea and China. And United States studies almost half of your time. And when they study, they spend most of their time studying sports or partying or cooking or how to ski or swim, not necessarily the maths and sciences or engineering that will help the future. So we've gone through also Hofstede's ideas of power distance, career orientation, which should be called career orientation, not necessarily the masculinity or femininity, which is referenced by Hofstede. And then uncertainty avoidance. I've talked several times in class about how students must try seriously to overcome the natural Korean tendency to have high uncertainty avoidance, or a very high interest to avoid anything you might not know. Because if you avoid opportunities, if you avoid things you really don't know, you will miss a lot of opportunities. And the art of war, as it says, is one thing is maybe the art of spying or the art of image and deception. You need to make sure you have an image that is known by your targets. Make sure you have your image known to the companies that you want to work with. So if you just sit quietly in a class of 50 or 100 people, they will not notice you. So stand out, say something, share things in our class, practice here, practice in Facebook, practice when we have interactions with VIP like this afternoon. You put up your hand and you try to ask intelligent questions. It's usually very wise to not just ask the question directly from you, because the other person might think it's a bad question or a foolish question. So if you reference something else, like you find a journal article and you say, this journal article says this, you cannot be attacked. And you look intelligent no matter what they say or you're referencing. You look intelligent because you have been researching and you're checking the background, and they can only attack the other person. So make sure you get a lot of information, reference very wisely so that you look good, and you develop your contacts with others. I'm going to skip through most of these. The thing that we were reviewing is the art of war. Can one of you guys tell me a little bit about the art of war? What is the art of war? Yes, go ahead.
Art of War is kind of a traditional book from, sorry, I cannot remember the pronunciation of the name, Sun Tzu.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, Sun Tzu, and it's giving us how to manage ourselves in a business world, comparing differences between West and East. It is talking about the wartime, but nowadays people are reading this book and find out some insights how to do the business and manage themselves.
Good.
Cultural differences.
Just on the point that what you just said was people should know how to manage themselves. You do realize what you just did is you managed yourself proactively. But I don't think you actually put your hand up. So Ali is one of the ones helping to give away marks. Everybody starts with 0 out of 100. As soon as you participate once, you get 1 out of 100. If you do a class presentation, you can get 10 out of 100 more. So whoever was just talking, I don't know who was talking, make sure Ali knows that you were talking, and you can put your comments in Facebook or your comments in the Excel file so we give you marks. Is that clear? Whoever was just talking?
Hay Minh Số, right?
Yeah, Hay Minh Số.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. One of the few students in the class that I am starting to know your name. Easter, I know the name Easter because it's such an original name, but I don't know what you have been researching. I don't know what your interests are. I don't know very much about you other than just the spelling of your name. Eben, so for example, you have started to understand the terrain, as the Art of War says. You have started to understand the idea of your imaging. You have made your image and your name well known in class by speaking every class and by participating a lot in the Facebook groups. And so just because of that, I'm recognizing you. Park Amin and Jungwoo or Shiraz Hassan. Your names I recognize from the class list, but I don't know what your interests are. I don't know very much about you. So you other students, you would definitely benefit by trying to throw information out to make an image for yourself, make the teaching team and I recognize who you are so we can help you more. Thanks again for that, Eben. So yes, as you can see on my screen, these are 3 different translations of the Art of War. Overall, the yellow is the main things to understand. You need to get into planning. How are you planning your life? How are you planning your business? How are you planning your future? I would be very happy to help you guys make your goals, develop your goals, make plans to get your goals, including in class. Most people do not make good plans or good goals, but that also reflects that more than 90% of the world do not achieve their dreams. They do not usually get to true success. So the more you do these, the more you challenge life and attack life and your jobs, the more you position yourself correctly to be around good people and good companies and ways to develop yourself, the better you can direct your growth. And many people look good, even though the reality is sometimes very different. I have worked with many different companies, and usually the university background is not that important. The marks that you have in class are usually not that important. What is more important is how you try to manage yourself, how proactive you are yourself, how you get out and interact with others. So practice in class. Next, you introduced the idea of the book. I just want to show this image here is an image. It looks like many small pieces of wood here, but these are basically giant sticks or giant chopsticks. And the Art of War was made something like 400 or 500 years before Christ. So we are now in 2020 plus 400 years. So almost 2,500 years ago, it was written down by these people that were soldiers on small little chopsticks. And each one of these are called chapters or premises, and they're translated as we've seen here. As we saw here, these 13 principles. Number 1, principle 1, planning. Principle 2, the challenge. 3, plan of attack, positioning, directing. I want you to be very well aware of the idea of illusion and reality, or weak points and strong points. Make sure you're always thinking about your own and using information. The idea of detailed assessment and planning. So knowing information is critical. And I may be overwhelming students in class by showing the whole class is on video, so you don't need to come to class. Plus, I have shared hundreds or thousands of files in folders that you can reference. Most students and teachers don't have that, but that is reality once you get out into the real world. You will have Google and more information than you can access. You need to start managing what is good and what is bad. And generally, most things are not really reliable, except the Web of Science or Scopus journal articles. So we can talk about that later. If there are some students that have questions, please ask anytime. But also with the information, and wanting to go forward, I will be teaching about Chinese management, Korean management, Japanese management, maybe Vietnamese management, and management of technology. Everybody must know about Google Analytics and Google Insights, or management information systems, or social media analytics and social media information systems, or insights programs, where there's billions and trillions of pieces of information about almost everybody in the world. And so if you know how to use that, you will have a much better chance of success. Most people know that information goes out on the internet and is never deleted. Most people understand there is a cloud with lots of information, but most people still do not know how to use it. So we will be teaching that. And the general idea is with analytics and insights programs. So even though this is more than like 2,500 years ago, it's still true. The importance of information and knowing the assessment of people around you and how you plan your development. It's also true that many people think they're doing well. Many people think they've got a good job, maybe even working for Samsung or working as a doctor or lawyer, but they don't remember the reality is more dentists and doctors and lawyers go bankrupt than almost anybody else in the world. So be aware of what is illusion, what is reality. If a doctor, for example, gets a small cut on their finger and they can't operate, they could easily go bankrupt. And the more you usually make with any type of job as a salary, the more you usually spend on cars and fancy clothes. So you don't save that much. Usually the people that do understand this might look like homeless people or wear ripped clothes or old worn shoes, but those people are the ones that are obviously are often super wealthy and financially secure. They don't need to work anymore. So start learning about the illusion and reality, and what is the illusion, or what is the image you are giving to companies. With that said, we've basically gone through art of war, and I'm going to be getting into Guangxi. Are there any questions from any students about what is the art of war before we get into Guangxi? Yes.
Yes, I am sorry to interrupt you, but about the Chinese management and Guangxi, our group is supposed to have a presentation about that topic today as a weekly topic project. So I'd like to ask you, when would be a good time to start our presentation?
Right at the beginning of class at 10:30. Thank you for starting to talk. Yes, I am not going to be waiting for too many other people. If you're ready, I'm very happy to let you continue.
Okay, so I'd like to say that our group is ready for today's presentation. So can we begin right now?
Yep.
Right, so would you please set me as a co-host to share my screen?
Already done.
Already done? Okay. Right, so can you see the screen? Can you guys see the screen?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. So great. So good morning, professors and our classmates. Today we prepared our presentation about today's weekly topic, the Chinese management. And our group is consists of Jae Sung, it's me, and Hamin Park and Jung So. Why is it not good? All right. So this is our table of contents for today's presentation. Since we have three team members, so we are going to explain those three parts for each one. And I'm going to get started with the first part, the structure of Chinese management. So in this part, I'm going to explain about the fundamentals of Chinese management with a bit of history to understand how these things came out. And I'm going to deal with this part as quickly as possible, because not because I am not really good with the history, or not because I think history is a bit bored, but because you know, the history part and overseas Chinese will be discussed in the next week's topics. But anyway, after talking about the history part, I will discuss about basic characteristics of Chinese management. So let's get started with the brief history of China. So, to deal with the historical background, we need to go back to the early 90s, in which the Qing dynasty collapsed. The fall of the great country triggered a mass number of immigrants to Southeast Asia. And also, right after the dynasty has collapsed, Japan invaded China, and also a lot of civil wars were going inside the country. Therefore, this trend to leave their home was really accelerated. So a lot of Chinese left their home to find a frontier with stable economic and domestic environment, because the collapse of Qing dynasty caused a lot of critical issues with the nation's economic situation, and Japan's invasion and other civil wars really made the country in the really confusing environment. So as mentioned before, most of the immigrants headed to the Southeast Asia countries such as Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand. And they participated in their new society as laborers, but unfortunately, they were not very welcomed in new countries because due to political or religious issues or many other reasons, Chinese laborers faced hostile society except Thailand. And actually, Thailand was the only country that made policies helpful for overseas Chinese, while rest of the mentioned countries did not. So to survive in the hostile society, what Chinese do was making a bond by themselves with corporational social network. With the modern Chinatown in the Los Angeles or the Incheon, they started to live together by relying on each other. So with that bond, they follow the principle of caution, and you may think this eventually triggered the high uncertainty avoidance of Chinese trend. Plus, the trend of this time, the social bond, the network, or relationships based on the cooperation, became the fundamentals of Chinese business management concepts. And with this slide, I'd like to briefly talk about the information about the CSE, China State Enterprises. When the Second World War was finished, a lot of industrial facilities from Germany or Japan were in China, and Chinese government achieved control of those industrial companies. And after the communists got the power, like the Mao Zedong or the Deng Xiaoping, they became the leader of Chinese country as a communist, and they succeeded the control of those industries, like starting from the let's say the light industrial to heavy industries, like such as railroads or the shipment or even the bank. So at that time, most of the business industries were achieved by the Chinese government, and the government literally were able to manipulate those industries by orders they made to control the society as they want. So to effectively control the massive business field, China copied the business model of Soviet Union. So CSE, by the way, is also known as the state-owned enterprises, were controlled by a hierarchical system, and this system was made out of 4 groups, starting from the central government and the order came from the central government ministry, which came down to the provincial government and city government, and finally to the enterprises. And at that time, all the authorities among enterprises were highly centralized by the Chinese government. However, they faced some limits as well. Since centralized business model could, those centralized business model could be easy to control those enterprises. But too much power were let's say focused on the central government, with other hierarchical authorities, and other hierarchical authorities caused some problems also. So such as taking too much time for decision making, or critical danger of mistake, which eventually led to prohibition of productivity. Therefore, China started to think, hey, this is not good, this is useless. So they thought the system may damage the society, which eventually changed their thoughts to improve the previous system. Moreover, people's recognition among the market has changed also. So for those reasons, China's government adjusted policies among business models from 1972 to build a modern business model of Chinese enterprises. And before I explain some other structural characteristics of Chinese management, I also would like to show some basic points of Chinese family business. So if you watched the video for today's topic, you must be familiar with this handsome professor provided great information for this slide. Anyway, the details with the CFB, the Chinese family business, will be also discussed in the later part. So I will briefly mention some general points. So as the name shows, the businesses are basically owned by family members, and the size of the companies tend to be small. Also, the businesses tend to be a private property and quite diversified, but not very specialized. And also, they usually have no rules that strictly organized, which means they may have some flexibility, and tend to be managed as a standalone business, which means one of the reasons for this trend is that because the company size tend to be small, but anyway, the standalone companies means they have no very separated department either. So I'm going to show you some simple strengths and weaknesses of this management style. And the good part, if the leader really well organized the power balance, the organization can reach the goal really easy without huge difficulties. And since most decisions are made by the leader, the boss, it may be helpful for a situation where high flexibility or quick decision making is required. But in the case of opposite side, the first problem is the lack of trust. It will be discussed later, but CFBs are basically consist of family members or relatives, so employees from outside may feel unfamiliar or have difficulties having loyalty for the company. Also, lack of organized system, and professionals may damage the sustainability. So when problem occurs, most of the CFBs doesn't have a systemized manual, so they tend to have more difficulties than other companies like CSE, which has a hierarchical system or detailed manuals. And if you are familiar with the Chinese history, I'd like to mention you must hear about the Great Leap movement. Is there anyone who heard about the Great Leap of China?
I did.
Yes, thank you for asking. But then I think the answer is quite obvious, but I'd like to ask you about your opinion. Was the result of Great Leap was successful?
Today, yes. At the time, not really.
Yes. So anyway, I think this example shows another critical dangers of CFB, where since the company boss has too much power, which means all the decision making should be done by him or her. The dangers, the pressure for the leader increases a lot as the company become larger. So just like the case of Great Leap, the Mao made huge damage for the whole country because he was in charge of making decisions for the whole country. And here's some other characteristics of Chinese management. To show some ideas, I brought some information from the Hofstede Insights by comparing some characteristics of China and Denmark for showing dramatic differences. So based on the mentioned information, Chinese business tend to have high authority for the leader and high power distance and high uncertainty avoidance, which means if you are an employee in the Chinese companies, what boss talks to you is very powerful, and it is quite hard to talk to your boss, and you might not be very happy with something new because you have high uncertainty avoidance. So until now, I just covered with some basic, the simple and brief informations about the Chinese characteristics of Chinese management. And from the next part, Hamin Park will continue the presentation by explaining the details of Guanxi, one of the most key points of Chinese management.
I am Hamin Park, and I will talk about the Guanxi, the network. Next slide. Here are three concepts which are important to understand the Chinese business: Guanxi, face, and renqing. Next. The first, Guanxi. The definition of Guanxi is the ambiguous because it is interpretable diversity. In fact, various articles define it with different interpretations. Among them, according to an article written by Wang and Yang, on the slide, we found that Guanxi is a special kind of interpersonal relationship which involve reciprocity, obligation, and indebtedness, characterized by the continuous exchange of favor in personal interactions with other people. That is, Guanxi is a Chinese interpersonal relationship for social and personal business. Next slide. Another reason why Guanxi is difficult to define at once is not only it simply means social relationship, but it needs to understand the interest of the Chinese and relational classes within the Guanxi. Such an exchange of favor tend to based on vertical social classes that reflect the Confucian principle rather than building equal social position. Through unequal social status, the weaker become the beneficiary of Guanxi. That is the beginning of Guanxi. And the study indicate that organizational Guanxi network in the past, defined as SSG, which means supervisor subordinate Guanxi, it failed to encompass the totality of Guanxi relationship by ignoring broader Guanxi network in organizations. So they propose a new construction of LFG, which means leader follower Guanxi, which defined as the existence of direct in-group ties with a particular set of differentiated behavior obligation. based on social norm between a leader and follower in the same organizations. This perspective show how new Guanxi try to build horizontal relationship deviating from the existing vertical relationship. Also, a strategic building relationship is called La Guanxi, which means an effort to make a new relationship or existing relationship are not useful enough. Involving such skill and strategy, there is a newly made term, 关系学, which means the relationology. With special strategy, Chinese gradually expand their 关系网 in order to maintain their 关系湖. Next slide. Second is face. Face is the key points of dynamic of 关系.
Very key point. Make sure everybody understands this.
Face that focus on the other's assessment, not on personal achievements, is one of the feature of East Asia countries. It is a class of behavior associated with self-respect, social status, and authority. Also, face is a comprehensive term explaining lian and mianzi. Lian is associated with personal behavior, whereas mianzi is something valuable that can be achieved. For example, a Chinese is socially criticized if he or she has no lian and low in status and has very limited social resources if he or she has no 面子. Therefore, one has to have 面子 in order to build one's social connection network. Next slide. Third is 人情. 人情 can be interpreted as a human feeling, and thereby 人情 seems to be equal to emotional feeling. But however, the differences is that 人情 is more social term than personal. It is the one of common accepted an official rule influencing interpersonal relationship, which is related to the Confucian concept. Next slide. 人, the highest value of the Confucianism, is fundamental. These 5 relationships emphasize the importance of differentiation in social hierarchy order. In certain situations, based on one of 5 Confucian relationships, 人情 maybe provide theoretical justification and induce people to follow it. Next slide. If one fail to follow the rules of equity in exchange of 人情, one lose one's face, then one's 关系 is in danger. Like this, these 3 concepts are very similar but has different from each other. Next slide. Obviously, 关系 provide a convenience and relational network in order to maintain their face. 人情 promote to act within a 关系 relationship. 关系 will play important role in Chinese society. Therefore, the understanding of 关系 is to be acquired. And Jungwoo will continue our presentation in question 3.
Next slide, please. From now, I will discuss about Chinese family-based business, which is emerging as large-scale in 1980. Family is the most fundamental value, and there are 5 subgroups for it. The core family member, close relative, long-term employee, distant relatives, and non-related employees. And most of the family-based business is composed of 8 people. Next slide, please. And the business owner tend to think that the business is the private property of the core family, so they do not want to share the ownership who are not the family member of family. So the CEO positions are always filled by key family members. The reason of Chinese family-based business is that they can trust each other and giving a task without any worry. Next slide, please. The structure of the family-based business is very simple. Since there are not too many members, they do not need much time to deliver the order, and all the work is done in one company without any outsourcing. They do all of the things from production, sales, or services. Also, there are no secondary departments such as R&D or labor relations. As mentioned before, the size of the company is really small, so they just think, work, and all together. Also, there are no restricted rule or systems. Since all of them is family and not too many people there, they do not have any restricted system. Same as Korea. In Korea, there are some family-based restaurants, and I work there as a part-time job, but they work very freely without any rules or systems. Last one is the specialization is low. Of course, those 3 factors always can be changed if the members or the scale of the company became large. Next slide, please. Then there are several advantages of family-based business. The first one is it can easily prevent the internal corruption. In case of state-owned or other company, the employee can easily betray the company and do a corruption since they do not have any relative with the company. However, in case of family-based, they could not do a corruption. The second advantage is that the family can control all the resources. By letting family members to do important positions such as supervisor or managers, they can concentrate to their work with an easy mind since they do not need to worry about other departments. However, there could be some disadvantage since there could be some loyalty problem. Of course, in Chinese and Confucianist culture is not to allow to betray the family, but nowadays there are so many people who break the morality and betray their family and kill their parents. This means that if the loyalty of the employee is low, it can lead to serious problem. Next slide, please. Next one is China state-owned enterprises. It is the legal entity which are managed by the states, and it gives huge impact to China since it possesses approximately 50% of the total GDP. Also, it used as important instrument of government policy. The government uses CSE to facilitate structural change in the Chinese economy, to acquire technology from foreign firms, and to secure raw material sources from beyond China's border. And the right side of it is the CSE's example. Next slide, please. And this is the advantage and disadvantage of the CSE. The first advantage of China's state-owned enterprise is that government intervention can benefit the economy by maximizing resource mobility. Second thing is that it can maintain the social stability when the economic crisis happened and people cannot find a job. The reason is that the state-owned enterprise can hiring more people to work. However, the CSE monopolized the economic situation of the China. The other company cannot make a huge benefit, so this means that the state-owned company dominate most market in China, so it can lead to rich and poor gap as well as economic distortion. Next slide, please. and we prepare some questions for audiences. And thank you for listening.
Okay. That was quick. Do you have anything else that your group wants to do, or are you ready for me to take back over?
Well, if we have a little bit more time, then I'd like to discuss about some ribbon questions for discussion, because I think some of the questions are very easy. So I'd like to just discuss about the first question and fourth, maybe question 1 and 4.
Thank you. I do note that you were the group leader of your group that just talked. And so what I am trying to point out is the Korean management. So far, most students in class are following the Korean management style, which you're waiting for the professor to say things and you're being obedient, just waiting for instruction. That is not the international style of business. That's not the style that I'm trying to promote in class. I hope you, Juk-sung, and So Jung-woo, your group can help other students in class develop their Guangxi. Try to help them start being proactive, rather than just you be the leaders of one small family-run business with no rules. The rules are everybody should be trying international management. So
Okay.
before you talk about your questions, can you try to get your classmates to be proactive and make comments or ask questions or evaluate you?
Okay, so I'd like to listen for some ideas of our other students about how they think about the question number 1 and question number 4.
Good luck with that. I guess that if you just have an open-ended question in Korea to a class, you're going to get a lot of students looking at their shoes saying nothing. So if you are the leader of a company, how are you going to get your staff to offer suggestions on how you can grow your company? Let's say your business today and your executives talking are part of a company. We're all part of a company. How are you going to get suggestions to improve your family-run business? Pause, long periods of silence.
Oh, now I understand what you've experienced.
Every day in Korea. But it's the opposite in many other countries. Gunsu Kim, I see you're about to say something. Go ahead, join us.
Yes. For the first question, um, the reason why Western companies having difficulties enter Chinese market is because Chinese government is based on the communism, and since, as Jung-woo said in the PPT, the Chinese family business and Chinese all the Chinese companies are governed by the government, so it's somewhat controlled by the country. So if if the Western businesses, which is based on more like um, republic, it's the opposite of the communism. So it will be it will be hard to adapt the market environment. And also Chinese has very strong guangxi between the citizens, strong connections between the citizen to citizen. So they will prefer to use their own country products rather than some outside products such as Western products. That's what I'm thinking.
Thumbs up.
So Juk-sung, the leader, just says, thank you, next.
Yeah, really, thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else? How about I help you guys with a few more topic. So I appreciate that Gunsu Kim, you want to answer some of the questions. You're analyzing the presentation. Juksong, you want to get more into the questions for students, but I want to get fights. I want to get debates. I want to get people more involved, almost arguing, fighting. We're online, so no black eyes, no bloody noses. It should be good. Test your brain. So, Gunsu Kim, you just said Chinese companies are controlled by governments. Can you tell me any company anywhere in the world that doesn't have to follow the government? Like,
Or maybe it is necessary part which is controlled by the government, all over the world. But in China, I just heard from Jongwoo that the most of big companies in China is governed by the government, and it dominates the 50% of the market share. So
okay, now what you're talking about, statistics saying 50% of blah, 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 that's something good that we can talk about. But what I'm trying to encourage everyone to do is take information and evaluate the information. What's good about it, what's bad about it, how can it help me? So if we say China has government control, doesn't everywhere have government control? Yes, they do. There's just a little bit of a different view to it. So I would like people to realize that. The other thing is, when you talk about Chinese family businesses, you are basically saying small businesses don't need rules. But does anybody remember a small family business that's run by like a father and daughter? I think the name of the small business is called Huawei. And the daughter of the owner or the founder got arrested basically just because she's the daughter and the CFO. You know, there are many family-run businesses like Samsung, like Hyundai, that are similar. What about the world's biggest company, Walmart? Walmart is run by a family. Microsoft run by the Gates family in many ways. So please be aware of those details. People say things, and I want you to think critically of the details. Make some suggestions for consideration. Be proactive. And no matter what, practice building your guangxi. Don't just sit and wait for somebody to give you a job or give you a mark. I have been giving away marks in class, but I'm not going to keep doing that all semester. You need to reach out and try to get it. I just sent everybody a text chatting in this group today, showing that some students may have close to 20 marks out of 100, but other students that are quiet still have 0 out of 100. And every day you can get 1 out of 100, or before November 12th, sorry, before October 12th, which is the 7th week, you need to share your details, even mistakes. You should share anything you have. What are some difficulties you have and what are some good things? Don't just try to look like a God genius. Because if you are just a God, maybe other people are going to hate you. So if you show that you have difficulty doing your project, other people can help you. And you can get help making class easier by just sharing that now. Please feel free to comment. Any other questions or comments? What are some of the main points about guangxi? That's question number 1. Yes.
To add what Konsu Kim said, I guess the older countries and older companies has the intervention of the government, of course. But however, the reason why the China is much more emphasized on that is we can just say that like the censorship of the government toward the Chinese company is kind of a severe. And based on my experience in China, I couldn't use any Google. So at that time, it was like 2018. So like Pokemon, like there was a game based on the Google system, was kind of a boom all over the world. But however, it was not acceptable to do the game in Chinese regions. And based on that experience, I found that I realized that the censorship of government is much more severe compared to the other countries. So I just wanted to share the experience and add more information about why we're talking about the censorship, especially on the Chinese market.
Okay, thanks. That's a great topic about censorship. Everybody that is sitting quietly in class, you are censoring yourself. You are absolutely 100% censoring your image so that nobody else will see your image unless you say something and contribute, even if it's a question that's crazy, even if it's a problem. By sharing anything, you're not censoring yourself, which means you're opening yourself up for guangxi, which is good. It's opening yourself up for networking, for building with others. No one on the planet can be successful alone. You must learn how to work with others. So yes, we're studying guangxi and we study the art of war, but it generally has nothing to do with national borders. It generally it's not absolutely confined to just China. It's anywhere in business you must learn these things. If some people check the censorship, world censorship, or journalists have an association of censorship, and they may say that North Korea has some of the highest censorship in the world, and then Vietnam and China and South Korea all have some of the highest censorship on the planet. Are you aware of that? Are you aware that it's not even possible to say Coke is better than Pepsi or Pepsi is better than Coke in Korea? There's some sort of censorship, or some people call it laws, defamation. You're not allowed to say anything that would make anybody else or any company harm their image in Korea. So there's censorship everywhere. I'm not trying to complain. I'm trying to just point out, you must understand censorship is usually inside everyone. Donald Trump is successful because he's promoting his image more than anybody else. Even though everybody knows he might be kind of an idiot, but he is promoting himself. So please start doing the same. Don't copy Donald Trump for being bad, but copy him for promoting yourself, being good. Thank you. So far, everybody I've heard talk. Ali, we've heard So Hebin, Juk Song. Who else did we hear talk? Gunsu Kim, Jungwoo So. Did I hear Pak Hamin? Who else did I hear talk today? I didn't see any hands go up. I'm trying to give marks away and I can't even hear. Anybody, you should just say, I talk, just to try to get marks.
Yes, the Hamin Park was one of our group members today, so he presented also.
Okay.
And Hamin Park is me. They present our
Great.
coffee.
Mr. Park, talk more. Develop your image more. Develop your guangxi more. Show me who the heck you are. Ask, Mr. Park, ask some of your other classmates questions. Check they understand what is guangxi.
And then I pick one student to ask.
Yes, or 2, or 3, or 10. You're the boss. What are 2 dimensions of face?
Then how about Jiwan-seo? Are you there?
Hello?
I guess.
Can I answer what is the meaning of guanxi? Chinese relationship.
Well, you're talking right now, so obviously you can answer, but so far you're not answering. Is there a reason why you're waiting? I'm getting old, man. Hurry up.
I didn't understand this part.
Then ask a question. What didn't you understand?
What is the meaning of guanxi?
Okay, so you are a person in Asia and you don't know what guangxi is. Okay, I thank you for giving me this very interesting opportunity. I don't think I've met many people in Asia at all that don't know too much about Guangxi. One thing about it is it has a big deal related to face, and there are two main parts of face. So can anybody in class help us understand what are the two main components of face that make up Guangxi? How about I speak in-
面子.
Yes. What does anybody know what that means? Face, or saving face, or keeping face, or developing face is a big part of Guangxi. It's one of the first main things. And so face has two parts to it, Lianzi and Mianzi. So unless you are Chinese or you study Chinese, do you know what those two words are? Two Chinese words? Anybody? How about Shiraz? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. What about Chocobos? Going once, going twice, 3 times. What about, who else is left in class? Shiraz, are you about to start talking? No? Okay.
Yes.
I asked you to contribute. Maybe you need to talk to me after class to understand the class rules a little bit better. The answer is not yes. The answer is, can you actually share something with class? Can you develop Guangxi with class? Can you try to explain what is Lianzi or Mianzi? Okay, so guys, Juksong, obviously you have people here that need help to develop their own Guangxi. What can you say?
So basically, two characters, both of them means the face, but I'd like to say the characteristic is a bit different. So as Hamin Park mentioned during his presentation, Rian means the personal behavior, and Mianzi means the value that can be achieved. So what were the 3 questions that you mentioned before, Professor? Was like developing the face and preparing the face. Those things are like when people that means how to say that so when people sees you, you need to prepare some kind of persona.
Yes, by just sitting in your room, watching a Zoom video, it might be kind of nice. You might get some benefit, but it's not really going to help your future if you just sit quietly. The only way you will pass our class is you must volunteer to say things in class, because each time you say things, you can get points. Some students say things like your question right now, Juksong, that simple question could get you half a point. The fact that you're presenting articles gets you a full point. The fact that you're managing a class topic gets you 10 points. So you have maybe 11 points today. So that is all proactive. I didn't kick you, I didn't punch you or push you to do it. You took on your own ability to start managing the class today. If I start to help, maybe I can share one extra slide. You guys see this? Another definition for Lianzi and Mianzi is already in the class folder online that everybody can see in the main PPT this week. It's saying Lianzi is generally called etiquette. So there's 2 dimensions to the face. You need to be polite. You need to respect other people. So etiquette may be part of the Chinese Lianzi. And the other aspect or dimension of face is the social status and image. So by being polite and helping other people, that is polite, that's the lianzi, you will grow your position in life, or you will grow your guangxi, you will grow your social status, you will grow your image. The more you interact with other people, the more powerful you will become. And it is not only a Chinese thing. Every country in the world is trying to promote something like this. Korea is one of the most active countries in the world that has created a modern version of this. In China, they will say the Chinese community, and the community is informal, but there are some people that act like judges and will say, this person's bad, we need to fix him, we need to contact him and make sure he stops doing this. Or this person is good, they can be introduced to anybody. In most other countries, they will have a chamber of industry or a chamber of commerce, a group association of many companies. And that is the same thing as a chamber for guangxi, developing networks. The more you develop, the better. And you must be polite and you must grow your image in society. Any other questions? I see there's 2 chat questions, but I am not reading them now. I'm just talking with the class. Is anybody else aware of those details?
Professor, I'm a little bit confused. Is that correct that, for instance, if there is a corrupted officials, then he has no lian, but he has a mianzi because the lian is kind of a moral thing, and mianzi is like a social status, like the title of the job. Is that right?
The face has 2 parts, yes, and many times they're connected together. And so some people say, usually you don't have good guangxi unless you have both. But look at Donald Trump. Obviously, he's not very good with etiquette. Obviously, he's not perfectly polite. He insults people all the time, but he has basically the world's maximum social status. He's the president of a very valuable country. So you can have guangxi just from your image or social status, but it's better if you also have the lianzi. Does that help explain things?
Yes, thank you.
So if you are polite to other people, you will get other people liking you, but you may get people using and abusing you, just taking information from you and not giving you benefit. So that could be the lianzi. You have the face for helping others, and so people will come to you. But if you don't have the image of being sort of powerful or the social status that's rising, people may keep pushing you down and cheating you. So Ms. So, for example, make sure that people know you have shared a lot of information. If somebody wants more help from you, maybe it's nice, maybe it's not, but Donald Trump would say, maybe don't give anything else unless somebody gives you something. So you can start contacting each individual classmate, say, hey, I've got these 10 different articles, I can share some with you if you share one with me. That would grow your social status. And it still respects your etiquette in some sense. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, what else? I've explained this etiquette, the social status, good, so I'll stop and we can get in with other students. Ali, have you seen anybody's hand up? Anybody ready to chat? I think the class is basically finished.
Yes,
So,
I think actually I really want to have some comments of what we are discussing on the presentations. So from my side, when I started relating to management, I actually think that information that you guys gave is very important, but there is one thing that I think that we can thinking about is relating to visions, and I didn't see there's many students clearly really talking about that. because as I can see that religion is also impacts a lot in management style and the way that we are like try to make guangxi for everybody. So I don't know, but from my side, some aspect that is affect my style or even working style a lot. So I just want to have a small discuss about this. For example,
Can you clarify your question? What are you proposing? Like the class is finished, so
yeah,
what would you like people to keep doing?
I mean that I didn't see a lot of people just mentioning about reasons relating to management. So
Religion, okay?
yeah, so I don't know
Is there any
if
student in
from
class that wants to talk about how religion might connect with Guangxi? Any students? Going once? Going twice? I haven't heard from you, Easter. I haven't heard too much from Shiraz today or Shokabos. I invite you to try to contribute.
Professor,
Talk
I'd
about.
just like to share my experience about
Go
the
ahead.
religious. I'm not perfectly sure if we can be connected with the concept of Guanxi, but I just like to share my experience that when I was a sophomore, I was able to visit India and interview a manager of Daewoo Corporation by participating in the school trip program. But anyway, he hired how do I say he hired a person to decorate the garden, and when he came to the company in the morning, he was the person was trying to cut the trees with just a single scissors, just single pair of scissors, like really slow, fully concentrating on doing things like chop, 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 chop. So he was like, okay, that can be good. And in the evening, when he came out of the country, that guy was still chopping the tree with the same scissors, like chop, chop. So he just stopped him and asked, why are you doing this? And the answer was like, one of the religious concepts of India, the karma, that what they do in the present life will affect their future life, and what they are doing in the present time must be influenced by the past. So he was saying that I am doing this kind of job because I didn't do very well in the last life, and I will do my best without any kind of how to say the comfortable tools to maximize my effort for a better future life. So he was like, so he took some measurements to make him use better improved equipments to how to say
Get better results, be more efficient.
yeah. So I think I still need to think a little bit more to
Some aspects of religion can impact Guangxi for sure, and that is one very interesting example. Another example of religion is the overall concept. What is religion? Religion, some people say, relates to some higher being. Other people say it is just an organized form of Guangxi. The wealthiest organization on the planet, many people say, are the religions. The heads of religions are generally the most powerful people in the world, like the Pope. And they have almost the most assets and things like that. So I used to work with the United Nations and CIA in the past, and one of my projects was to help somebody like Ban Ki-moon get into the United Nations. That was initiated in some sense by the CIA, and the CIA said, we have to come and get somebody in Korea to be nominated in Korea to represent in the United Nations. And so we had to get everybody in Korea to vote for him. So my job was to do that, promote him in Korea and around the world. And so the first thing I had to do was get everybody voting for him. And so I started to make a marketing manual or marketing images to put up on Facebook and Google. And they say, no, that's not the way it works. They say, go talk to the head person of all of these, basically the head priest, and go talk to the head Buddhist guy, because those guys, if you get them to accept what you want, and basically they required bribes, then they would get everybody in their church or everybody in their temple to listen to them. And so, for example, the head Buddhist monk, I had to go give a briefcase full of cash, plus alcohol, plus meat, although they're not supposed to take any of that. And after I gave that, he got all Buddhist monks and everybody going to the temples to promote these guys, which eventually got connected with the United Nations, and you guys know the rest of the story. So religion is obviously very well connected with business. And the more people you have promoting you, the better. So anyway, the class is finished. I thank you very much, Juksong, and everybody else. I look forward to hopefully seeing you guys this afternoon when Samsung guys are joining your class.
All right. Thank you, professors.
Bye.